Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Today, our webinar at Callings.ai is on career pivots, this great career pivot. So I'm Laura Wigglesworth. I'm a senior advisor at Callings and I lead our webinars. And halfway through this webinar, when we go into some of the tools, I'm going to share a code for 60 days free access to the Callings platform. So, joining me today is Steve Jaffe, a podcaster, expert, author, you name it, when it comes to layoffs. And I'm going to share a link where you can find Steve's audiobook or buy the book. But before I do that, let me give a little bit of background about Steve and the topic today. When we hear the phrase the great career pivot, most of us think about layoffs. And layoffs are a huge reason why people pivot that Steve's going to talk about. But pivots happen for a variety of reasons. Oftentimes there's something that pushes you. So the layoff, the biggest reason, burnout, shrinking industry, maybe you hit a ceiling. Sometimes something pulls you. You have a new interest, you have a baby, you move somewhere, you want more flexibility. And sometimes it's both. And so we're here to help you navigate your career pivot. So, like I mentioned before, Steve Jaffe is with me. He's an author, a podcaster, an expert on all things pivoting and layoffs. And Steve has personally been laid off 4 times. So, this conversation for him is not theoretical. I've been laid off 3 times. Steve understands the emotional side of career disruption and the practical side about how do you rebuild. And instead of doing a slideshow presentation today, Steve and I are going to structure this as a conversation around 5 key questions. The questions that we're going to address are: why do people pivot? How common layoffs are, and why do they happen? Why do layoffs create grief, and how do we work through that? Fourth question is, so how do we decide where to go when we're pivoting? And then the fifth question is, how do we get started finding that next job? And like I mentioned at the end, I'm going to show some tools from Callings that can help you with that. They're called the My Insight tools. And I'm going to share a code so you can get free access to the platform. So, Steve, I turn it over to you with our first question. And while you introduce yourself, I will also pull up the slide on where people can find your book, your audio book, and your written
Thank
book.
you.
But
Yeah, thanks so much.
the first question after you do a quick intro of yourself is sort of the what are the reasons? Why do people pivot?
Yeah. So a little bit of background, Steve Jaffe, and I have unfortunately achieved my 10,000 hours of being an expert in layoffs. I've been laid off 4 times over the course of my career. First time was in the spring of 2001. I was caught completely off guard. It was totally unexpected. And it took me a long time to recover from that. My fourth layoff was in the summer of 2023, and it was like water off a duck's back. And as I did some introspection on that journey that I had been on across those 4 layoffs, I discovered that I had learned a set of skills to cope and to manage with what I learned was grief. I learned that grief as a byproduct of being laid off is a very real and very little talked about effect. So much of the advice that we get after a layoff is update your resume, go on job interviews, network. And what I think is really important is to take a minute to pause and understand that what you're feeling is grief. Um, I also believe that if you do process that grief in a healthy way, it will manifest in ways that will have a positive impact when you do go on those job interviews and you talk about maybe why you left your last job, maybe why you got laid off. You won't harbor the same amount of anger, or at least you'll be able to kind of suppress it in a way that you can put a positive face on the experience. So that's my background. You can find my book. It's The Layoff Journey from Dismissal to Discovery, Navigating the Stages of Grief After Job Loss. And, in a nutshell, what I'm here to talk about is, it's important to heal before you hustle.
Yeah.
Manage those emotions, and you'll be much better in the long run. Now, in terms of the necessity of a pivot after a layoff, or any kind of life reset that you may be going through, um, there are all sorts of different reasons why somebody may choose to pivot. Um, you may find that your career path is experiencing contraction.
Mhm.
So the competitive landscape of today with AI and everything else, there are entire industries that are just being decimated or are disappearing overnight. And I
Right.
know, Laura, your industry is
Global
one of
health and
those,
development. Yep.
right? There's
Hundreds
a
of thousands of roles tied to aid funding have disappeared in the past year and a half. Yeah. So
right,
the
right,
industry's gone.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So the reasons are long, but I think everybody's journey on a pivot begins with the question of, you know, how much financial runway do I have?
mhm,
If I absolutely need to get another job in 30 days and
mhm,
I need to match my salary, my pivot is probably going to look a lot smaller than somebody who has a little bit more financial independence.
right. That's a good
If
point. Yeah.
if I'm in an industry that is not contracting, and maybe I was a kind of an anomaly based on the company, maybe they had just had individual financial troubles and weren't as impacted by, let's say, AI. It might be easier for me to find a job, relatively speaking. Now,
Right.
let's say you're trying to stay in the same industry, you're probably still looking at maybe a minimum of 6 months until you can land that job. Now, the flip side of that is if you're looking to pivot, it may take you 6 months to successfully pivot. So why not use that 6 months to do something where when you do land, you land on something that you are really excited about and
Yep.
interested in. Um,
Yeah, well, before we talk about how to pivot, I think it's good to spend a couple more minutes talking about this issue of how we got here to a webinar on career pivot. So, I know you and I have talked about both a push and a pull. So, for the push factors, they can be things like external shock. You mentioned my industry, global health and development, pretty much, I mean, disappeared just about. And I know you mentioned 40% of Americans have been laid off at some point. There's also hitting a ceiling. There's nowhere to go next. You're the director of marketing. You've been there 5 years. There's no VP role. Burnout is another reason. So that's you've got the ability, but no, not the energy. So you're a consultant, you're high performing, you've been working 70 hours a week, you travel all the time, you haven't had a weekend in months. And so you pivot to an in-house strategy role. So I know that Gallup says, I think it's 60% of employees say that they are burned out at least sometimes. But then there's also opportunity and interests. So what I want at 55 is not what I wanted at 25. You can, as a public health professional, you can move into climate technology because you want to work on prevention and systems change, for instance. Or, you have a coffee chat and it opens a door that you didn't even know existed. So it's a combination of a push and a pull. And so if you can talk just briefly before we move into how do you pivot specifically to layoffs, because you mentioned before that even if you didn't take that jump and you do have new interests, oftentimes getting pushed out in being laid off is
yeah,
the impetus that
right.
gets people to come to a webinar like this. So
Yeah.
talk about how common layoffs are and what the meaning behind them, what people should take from it.
Yeah, this stat, it's from 2019 and it says 40% of all Americans have been laid off at least once. I suspect that percentage has gone a lot higher now. I think more than 40% have been laid off. But what's interesting is it comes as a surprise almost because people don't necessarily talk about their layoff and their layoff
That's right.
experience.
It's a mark of shame.
Um,
That's right.
yeah, there's a shame and embarrassment that come from a layoff that people should let go of, and it really will go a long way on that healing journey. But if more of us talked about it and became a bit more, um, less of that scarlet letter,
Mhm.
certainly in the hiring practice, it would have a much more positive impact on people's mental health, but their ability to land another job.
I
So,
remember in your book, you said that you could get Employee of the Year in November and being laid off in January, that
right,
it's not a character
absolutely.
verdict.
No, no. Layoffs are a verdict of math markets and mergers, not merit,
The three
right?
M's. Okay.
The myth of meritocracy is probably one of the biggest myths of the workplace, where if you work hard enough and you're smart enough, you'll be rewarded. And in
Mhm.
this instance, in this climate that we live in, rewarded would mean some longevity or loyalty from the employer. And what we've all learned now is there really isn't any loyalty. Loyalty is kind of a one-way street.
Mhm.
So when markets get difficult, whether it's a national pandemic, a recession, competitive market forces, or
Mhm.
new technology like AI, and companies see an effect on their bottom line, it's the easiest thing that they can do is cut headcount. It's
Mhm.
much easier to cut headcount than take the revenue that's in your pipeline and like speed up your pipeline.
Mhm.
If your pipeline is a 6 month pipeline, it's going to take that long until you see any impact on your bottom line. If you
Mhm.
lay off a bunch of people, the next pay period, you'll likely see some sort of benefit. And unfortunately, what we've all seen now is that the CEOs are taking huge salaries and huge bonuses while they're laying people off.
Mhm.
And I'd say if there was a second myth of the workplace is that it's fair, and it certainly isn't. And you come to realize that um, we all should be our own free agents,
Mhm.
and not try and give something that we're not going to get back in terms of
I
yeah,
I love all these points. I love the fact that you say it if 40% of people get laid off, why don't we talk about it more? Because
right,
I think you identified something there that it's a mark of shame
yeah,
that we tend to think about it as well. We're being laid off because we're an underperformer.
right, right, and
Or
that's just not the case.
maybe we did get that employee of the year, but the truth is we're not that competent. So it's so hard.
Yeah.
Remember, this is a line item decision, like you said, Steve.
Right. The layoff opens the door to so much self-doubt,
Yep.
and like the hit to your self-esteem, and it leads you to do a lot of questioning that you just shouldn't do. You
Yep.
shouldn't try and attach any meaning or interpretation to the event other than you were kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you need to kind of resist the urge to look backward and wonder what if or what could I have done, and try and look forward and look at what do I do next? Where do I
Yep.
go from here?
Yep.
And that's a great segue into understanding where your pivot might happen and how it might happen
Yep.
as you start to look forward and think, what do I do from here?
Yep. So, okay, so I'm going to show the callings tools that I keep alluding to help people
Mhm.
figure out what are their skills, what are their accomplishments, where might they go next, what are the growing markets and kinds of companies and job types might they consider. So AI tools are one thing. In addition to that, there's the people and the learning that has to go along with this. So, how can people get started figuring out how and where to pivot when it comes to learning new things or talking to people? Can you be a
Yeah.
little more specific about that?
Yeah, I would say, start with an internal exercise of understanding what your own personal North Star is.
Mm,
Understand what's important to you, understand what your values are, understand your joys and your passions. Understand if you've had success because you enjoy what you do. I'm a
mhm,
big believer in like the strength finders and doing what you're good at.
mhm,
Um, do that personal exercise and find out if what you've been doing is in alignment with those things,
mhm,
or if there's something else that you're just drawn to. Understand your financial runway, understand, is your industry experiencing contraction? So
mhm.
maybe you love your industry and you've had success and it aligns with your personal values and your mission statement, but your industry is contracting. This is where I believe in the phrase from Wayne Gretzky, skate to where the puck is going, not where it is.
Uh-huh.
Identify where your industry, if it's being replaced by something, what is it being replaced by?
Ooh, that's
If your industry is moving towards something or away from something, find where you have the transferable skills to move with it.
that's good.
Sometimes we can just repackage what we've done in a way to kind of modernize it with modern language, but the skills are still the same skills.
Mhm.
Sometimes a little bit of um, reskilling or upskilling, a little bit of education, some
Mhm.
certifications can go a long way to making you be marketable in a new and fresh way.
And a couple of good
Sometimes,
places that people can go to, LinkedIn Learning, Coursera,
yes, yeah, yeah,
universities. A lot of universities will have free teleclasses for people who are unemployed,
hmm,
associations for the industry that you want to focus on,
yeah,
Eventbrite, free seminars. So people
right.
don't have to get a full 2 to 4 year degree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, networking is huge.
Mhm.
Networking is really important, but make sure that when you're networking, it's a two-way value proposition. You don't want to just approach somebody and kind of ask what they can do for you. Make
Mhm.
sure that there's something that you can do for them so that there's mutual benefit there. It's important, I believe, network before you need it.
Mhm.
Before you're laid off, start building your LinkedIn connections, start building those relationships so that when you do need them, you've already have them there.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's also important to make sure that as you're building out that network, you're looking at maybe who your competitors are. If you work at a particular company and there's four or
Totally.
five different competitors, connect with people at those companies because if something
Totally.
happens to your company, it's much easier to go to the adjacent company,
You
or
bet.
you
It's
never
a
know
hot
when there's
commodity to have worked with
right,
competition. Yes.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
and you never know when there's mergers and acquisitions.
Yep.
That competitor could be the person that you're working for the next day.
Yep.
So, and I've always done where, I've thought, okay, if some terrible thing were to happen tomorrow and this thing were to go away, what would I do?
Yeah.
And I've connected in those companies and I've made relationships in those industries where I thought, it'd be really fun to like work in the outdoor sports apparel or equipment industry.
Hmm.
And, I might, do a little kind of investigation and networking there, just to kind of, see what that's like and look at what those people have in their background that I might need to have in my background
Yep.
if I were to make that jump. So, in a way, I'm from marketing, so competitive analysis sort of I do by
Second nature to
default.
you. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so that's all just kind of investigative work that I do naturally. But people can do as well when they're looking at, what sort of pivot should I make and can I
Yeah.
make?
We had a webinar, actually one of our most biggest attended, more than 800 people, on networking for introverts. So
Yeah.
one of the things people tend to worry about when they start these kinds of conversations is what do I have to offer? And you said, well, it's good to make it a two-way street. I can
Hmm.
tell you that one thing you're offering people is the chance to talk about themselves and give advice.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
loves to give advice. It
Right.
doesn't mean we
Right.
follow it, but you're making them feel good.
You're
And
absolutely
we
right.
like to
Yeah.
talk about ourselves. So,
Yeah. Sometimes
um,
what you're giving back is that ego boost. And you're right.
exactly,
People
exactly.
love to
The
feel like,
flattery. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm the
people ask
knowledgeable
me,
expert that
like,
people are coming to for advice.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And you don't have to have 30, you just have to have three. So
Hmm.
somebody who's doing the job you want to do, somebody who recently pivoted to that field or company, somebody who's hiring in that field, a former professor, someone in the association that is for your industry. Just and starting with that hook, what you have in common with the person. You read their blog post, you listened to their podcast, you read their
Hmm.
book.
Hmm.
You weren't able to make it to the conference they spoke at, but you saw the post about it and you have a few questions. And could you call them for 15 minutes to pick their brain just to learn about or to, follow up on one of the things they said?
Hmm.
People say yes to a lot of those things, time limited, task specific, 15
Hmm.
minutes. Um,
Yes, yes. Be specific with your ask in terms of what you're looking for. Be specific in your time and be respectful of their time. And everybody would be willing to give 15 minutes if they knew what it was that you were asking for. I
yeah.
really like that. Yeah, be really specific and be specific in your outcome. I'm looking to talk to you about this so that I can blah, blah, blah. And if they can't help you, they may say, I can't help you, but I know this other person. I'll put you in contact with them.
Great, excellent.
Yeah.
I would like to show some tools that people can access for help figuring out where is it they want to go next and how do they get
Yeah.
there. And so I'm going to share my screen
These
and
are great. I love these.
thank you. I'm going to give everybody out access to Callings for 60 days. So the way you get this access, www.callings.ai/Jaffe, Jaffe, really easy. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
write that in the chat as well. But Callings does three things for you. It can help clarify what it is you want and give you a path to go where to go. It will help you use AI tools to apply for jobs, and it'll connect you with information and other people. So that community part is crucial. On Mondays, we have the calling circle where we problem solve together, and we have the webinars like this. I'm not going to spend as much time showing you the tracker for how to find and apply for jobs. I'm going to spend more time on the My Insights tools, which is what matches with this webinar. So when you log into Collins, when you create your account, I'm showing you my screen right now for my account. You go down to this part of the toolbar that says My Insights, and you're going to get a questionnaire with between 20 and 30 questions in it. Everybody's questionnaire is different because to create your account, you're going to put a resume in, and it's going to come up with questions based on your resume. So I'm not going to demo this right now because it takes probably about 20 minutes to fill out. And it's going to ask you things like, for me, I came from recruiting. I led a team and I worked for 25 years in global recruiting for the NGO sector, primarily global health and development. And so it asked me things like, Laura, do you want to lead a team or do you want to be doing the recruiting yourself? Do you want to be incorporating AI tools or do you want to do the old fashioned of talking to people and interviewing people? So it asked me questions to clarify what is it that I want to spend my time doing? What kind of an organization do I want to be with? Do I want my work to be the center of my identity or do I want it to be complementary and I want to do other things primarily? So those kinds of questions. When I was done with the questionnaire, then it came up with a dream job for me. And this is just another way for me, a circuitous way for me to remind myself, what do I want to spend my time doing? It even made up the name of a company. Check this out, Steve. It says Global
Mm.
Innovators. This company doesn't really exist, but if it did, I
To
should.
buy that URL.
Yeah, there's an opportunity for someone. But the responsibilities that are described here, leadership, incorporating AI and tech tools, training and capacity building, employer branding. These are the things I want to spend my time doing. So it got this through the questionnaire and my resume. Another thing that you'll want to use my insights for is the market fit report. So when I ran this, it comes up with what are the growing industries and companies that match my interests that I might want to work in. So for those of us who find ourselves like my industry is almost gone, I have to shift. I want to do the same thing, but I got to find whole new industries. And it came up with HR, tech, and talent intelligence companies. The sector, it even, it gives you the sources where it comes up with it. And these were the suggested companies I might want to start with, building my network and getting to know the issues that they deal with. Digital health and healthcare, another way that I can take my career. So my master's was in public health, and I spent along many years specifically in global health organizations. So growing area, health technology companies, it identified. And then a third area were government, federal health agencies, integrators, consultancies. So those are the three biggest ones it suggested for me. And before I ran this report, I actually hadn't really thought about health technology companies, but now it makes perfect sense with my work at Callings and my work, before that in global health. It's a nice way to merge the two. And it gives you the data where it came up with that information. Okay. So this is another My Insights tool that you'll want to spend some time with to understand, well, where do I belong and where do I want to focus my networking for my pivot? Who else do I want to talk to? The last thing I want to show is the brand elements. So one of the things you realize when you get laid off is your confidence can go into the toilet. So we've had people who say that's the biggest thing they lost when they lost their job, that they were at the top of their game, that people were telling them they were great, that they had a team they managed, that they were getting great performance reviews. And then suddenly the rug's pulled out from under you. And it's shocking, sobering, and sad to think how quickly you can lose that all and forget when someone says at a cocktail party, what do you do? To say, well, I don't know what I am. I don't know what I'm good at. So for me, once I ran this branding report, I found it helpful to have it say to me, I help growing global health technology companies hire great people. And for my 2-minute pitch, here's what I am. I'm a senior talent acquisition leader. I have 2 decades in global health recruiting. I've led teams, developed employer branding strategies, trained hiring managers, etc. And then there's a summary and headlines and what makes you unique. So all of these kinds of things can be helpful to your career pivot. Okay,
This is fantastic.
those are the main things that I wanted to show people on career pivoting. One more thing I want to show you, because once you identify, okay, I want to move into a global health technology company. Steve talked about having conversations and talking to people. How do you even figure out who you want to have the conversation with? So the way that you can do that is under target companies. These are some of the companies my market fit report came up with. And for each of the companies, or for some of these companies, I created what's called a speculative role. I click this button here, and I'm not going to do it because it takes a few minutes. But once you do, the role will go into your tracker, your job tracker. I mentioned to you that Callings does 3 things: helps you figure out where you want to go, helps you connect with other people and learn through webinars, and then helps you apply for jobs and network with the people who are connected to those jobs. So for that element, your speculative role, along with other jobs that you might be interested in, come onto your tracker. And once you go to those jobs, and you'll see if they're very clearly marked here as a speculative role, which means that there's something you can consider pitching to these companies when you talk to people. And if you go under network, you'll see it identifies people that you can reach out to. This is gold. No, none of the other platforms have this. And even better, you don't have to be connected to these people on LinkedIn. It gives you a way to contact them. So one of the people that it recommends, if I come up with a speculative role, I'm head of talent intelligence is the role that it came up with. If I want to talk to Melanie, because she's the kind of person who might want me in that kind of a role, and I want to network with her, Callings will identify what it is that I have in common with Melanie and how can I get in touch with her. So there's an outreach strategy here, things I have in common with her, and where she worked in the past. And then you hit this button that says reach out, and it'll even give you a suggested email to contact Melanie. So here's the text of that. You can change that. You can put in, change this into French and it'll translate the whole thing. But you can also just change the words on this. And then when you click open draft email, it'll give you Melanie's email address. Again, this is pretty cool stuff that other platforms don't have. Okay, so I mentioned to you, Callings does 3 things. It helps you figure out what is your direction, where do you want to pivot. It helps you get in touch with people and apply for jobs, and it helps you get connected. I want to show you just one more thing before we close, which is the how to apply for jobs and get jobs. And we're going to go back onto our job tracker. This is the place that sort of like your mission control, it keeps you organized. Every couple of days, you're going to get an email from Callings with new jobs, but you can also go into your tracker and click finding matching jobs. When you first put your resume in and you answer the questions, you might want to edit your preferences and describe in layperson's English, what is it that you want? So here's my description. Because otherwise it's going to extract a lot of keywords from your resume, and it might not give you the kinds of jobs that are quite right. So describe it in layperson's English. It uses semantic search. And then you're going to get, every time you open it up, you're going to get more jobs. And these jobs, 90% of them come from the career websites. So we know that they're real jobs. These are not jobs called evergreen jobs that are on Indeed, for 6 months or never get filled. These are real jobs typically. So, and it's really easy. You read it, add it to your job tracker with the push of a button, or delete it. Don't show me again, right? Then when you go to your tracker, Here's the jobs listed. Here's one that I'm interested in. You click on the job. It will give you a lot of background about the position, as well as an assessment of where you might be strong, medium, or weak, using green, yellow, and red for the job. And then you can use these tabs up here to prepare resumes and cover letters, identify people to network with and what you have in common with them, and then apply for the jobs. So you can download them after you do this as a PDF or Google Doc, or you can go in here and edit and make changes to it. It'll tell you where it thinks you should accept the changes or keep things. It's got keywords here that light up, and it even explains the reasoning for it. So you can accept all that, keep the original, whatever you want. And then you can download it as a PDF. So that's a little bit of background about Callings to show you the 3 things that Callings helps you do for your job search. And just remember to everybody that if you type in www.callings.ai/Jaffe, Jaffe, you're going to get 60 days free use of the Callings tools. Steve, I'm going to give you the last word to wrap us up today about career pivots.
I was talking about my first layoff in 2001 and how difficult it was. I wish there was a tool like this in 2001. It's amazing how AI can help the job seeker in a way that benefits them. So often AI can sometimes harm the job search, and this is a great tool to put into the hands and to empower the job searcher. So I think it's great. I love what you guys are doing. I love all of those tools that you showed. If there's anything that I said that you connected with, if you'd like to learn more, you can visit my website at thestevejaffe.com. There's a free chapter. You can download a free chapter of the book, take it for a test drive. If you like it, you can check out amazon.com. There's an ebook, an audio book, paperback is
We'll put the
there.
link to the audiobook when we send out an email with this recording too.
Great, thank you. You can get it any place that you buy books, though, so you don't have to exclusively get it on Amazon. And I'm happy to connect with anybody. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, just check me out there. It's Steve Jaffe.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to